The Chian Natural History Museum is planning to expand amid a growing collection and surging public interest. Visitor numbers hit a record high last year with over 88,000 guests, prompting the push for more space. Securing funding is now the museum's top priority. The move comes as the museum marks its 10th anniversary of scientific discovery.
It's home to over 1 million natural history specimens and stands as a symbol of discovery in Singapore. Since opening in 2015, the Chian Natural History Museum has welcomed over 650,000 visitors, a reflection of its growing public appeal. In 2024, it recorded its highest attendance yet. Capping a decade of milestones, the museum's anniversary was marked by a distinguished visit from President Tharman Shanmugaratnam and Mrs. Jane Itogi, who attended as guests of honour.
The interest has always been there, it's just more exposure now. But I would say this doesn't take away anything from the efforts that are being made to generate even more interest and to reach out to more people.
2 new exhibitions were also unveiled, highlighting rare finds from donations and expeditions. Also, an update on a bold effort to digitally reunite specimens collected from Singapore, but are now scattered across the globe.
We have Signify, which collaborates with a lot of the institutions in London, in Europe, in various places. We also talk about expeditions, expeditions that we've gone on over the years. So we also talk about the Rimba expedition to Sarawak. So there are some specimens from there as well.
A commemorative book pays tribute to a Scottish naturalist who arrived in 1819 and described Singapore as an archipelago of islands. One of the book's authors hopes it will offer a fresh perspective on Singapore's story.
Usually people would think of Singapore as a single mainland city rather than an archipelago. But in fact, we are an archipelago of currently 54 islands. Actually, in the past, we have up to 79 islands. And through the changes over the centuries, we lost some, we gained some biodiversity and of sorts, and eventually reached to a total of 54 islands in the present.
The 7-story museum wants to expand to support more years of discovery.
Now it's about trying to find the funding to build up the connecting building we have here. Once we have more space, that will allow us to expand our temporary exhibitions and allow our gallery to be a bit more dynamic. If we were able to expand, we'd be able to have more or bigger exhibition halls, and that will also create more space for our research and our collections as well.
As its collection grows, the museum aims to stay true to its mission, dedicated to preserving the wonders of natural history.
And for more on the museum's efforts to archive Singapore's biodiversity and grow the country's natural history community, I have with me Martin Lau, Biodiversity Histories Lead at the Chian Natural History Museum at the National University of Singapore. Mr. Lau, thank you for joining us. Now, can you tell us what inspired the Signify project and how does it align the museum's broader goals?
So the inspiration and the motivation for the Signify project was actually the realization that there are thousands upon thousands of natural history specimens that were collected in Singapore in the past, but that are now in countries overseas. This has been the result of many different taken place for many different reasons. One of them was, of course, during the period of scientific discovery, during the period of exploration. Naturalists were bringing specimens back with them. And there was no natural history museum, of course, in Singapore back then. But these naturalists will bring the specimens back, and they are now residing in depositories all around the world. So almost every major natural history museum around the world has at least a specimen from Singapore. And this realization brought us to the point where we are now, where we are trying, as we mentioned, to digitally reunite the specimens with their home, which is Singapore, where they were once collected. But to put them into context, to contextualize these specimens, and to realize that they continue to form a very rich part of Singapore's biodiversity history.
How does the project enhance access to Singapore's natural history collections, both locally and internationally?
Yes, so the Signify project actually started, like we always say, in our own backyard. So we started by actually digitizing many of the historically important specimens in our own collection, which is at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum. And once this was done, we managed to iron out a lot of the protocols, the workflows, and once this was done, we actually started contacting overseas natural history museums, getting in touch with curators, with their administrative staff, to see how we could collaborate with them. And that was basically the start of that. The Signify team goes overseas to these depositories and digitizes these specimens at very, very high resolution, and brings the data back to Singapore, cleans them up, and provides it to anybody. So we like to call it anytime, anywhere, anyone access. And it's freely available on our website, high resolution, and with, basically anyone can use this information and this data and these images.
What are some of the biggest challenges in bringing together these specimens from museums around the world?
So natural history museums have, rightfully and correctly safeguarded their collections literally over centuries. And because of this, they tend to, just as we tend to be very protective of these specimens because, be it from pests, animal pests, as well as human pests, human thieves. But because museums tend to be very protective, there is a certain amount of relationship building, collaboration building that needs to be done. And it has been an experience for us. I would say it was not so much a challenge, but an experience. We have been able to get in touch with these museums, work with the curators who have, decades of experience working with these collections, but to understand how they work and to work closely with them and allow them to be comfortable with our team going into their collections and actually accessing these specimens. So that was one of the workflows and processes that needed to be ironed out. Of course, other things, unforeseen circumstances like airport delays, problems with our luggage, with our equipment, always come into the picture.
So how do you ensure the accuracy and preservation of these digital records?
So the museum, all natural history museums around the world are part of a much larger community, and they regularly share protocols as well as global standards on digital preservation of data, of data standards, imaging standards even. And we are part of this community. So it is actually a great community. But through the community, for example, the Signify team has been able to go for courses, attend courses, and learn from the people who are actually coming up with the protocols. That allows us to be to use the global standards, especially, that can be used by other museums. So there's a lot of interoperability and a lot of interconnectivity through the use of common standards.
Can you tell us more about these collaborations with these international museums? How do they enhance the Signify project?
So, from the basis of a lot of our partnerships actually is curators to curators. So curators have daily access and they are in constant contact with the specimens. So they are actually the best people to be to talk to and to get to know the collections better. So that is actually, I would say, the basis for a lot of our partnerships. Our curators, our team on our end would often work directly with curators in the museums that hold Singapore specimens, get to know the curators and get to know their collections through the curators. I think that's very important. And that forms, I think, the basis for a lot of our collaborations. Yes.
So what long-term benefits do you foresee for Singapore's natural history community as a result of this project?
I think the field is wide open. For example, a good example, I think this year was the museum participated in the Singapore Art Week for the first time. And one of the things that we did was actually to use these high-resolution digital specimens and to bring them back to where they were collected. So, for example, this beetle here, it was actually the first beetle to be given a scientific name. We actually took it back to Bukit Timah because we think, to the best of our knowledge, it was probably collected in really good rainforests, and we actually had the specimens there. This allows us, in a way, to contextualize the specimen. So, if the specimen is in London and only observed in London and studied in London, it is divorced from where it was first collected and where it used to live. But by bringing it back to Bukit Timah, by placing it in its original habitat, I think Singaporeans, the natural history community, and artists, that is why we wanted to be part of the Art Week, can have a better idea and a better understanding of what Singapore used to be like and what Singapore can continue to be like. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming here and giving us an insight into the workings of the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum. That was Martin Low, Biodiversity Histories Lead at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum. Thank